It's been 5 years since Fukushima. What is the situation right now at Fukushima?
Ever since this thing began 5 years ago now, they have been hemorrhaging radioactive liquid waste into the ocean. And so on a good day, you have 300 tons, which is 300,000 liters, which is about 80,000 gallons of radioactive groundwater flowing into the Pacific Ocean. That's on a good day. On bad days, they have things happen like in the summer of 2013 when they lost an entire container of highly radioactive water. It leaked onto the ground, into the groundwater, and out into the ocean. And that was highly radioactive. That was not dilute, radioactively contaminated groundwater. So they have this massive problem of radioactive wastewater, and it's grown to epic proportions now. We're talking about over 1,000 of these giant water storage tanks that are 30 feet tall. It's 750,000 tons of radioactive, highly radioactive water that they don't know what to do with. You could have a massive release if these hastily built tanks were to release their contents. And our board member, Kendra Ulrich, who's a senior nuclear campaigner with Greenpeace Japan, just put out a report about a week ago about the ecological impacts of Fukushima Daiichi. And they are great, they are bad. And what she described was mutations in plants, whether they're trees or mushrooms that are absorbing radioactivity at high concentrations, just like at Chernobyl. And she also described insects that have genetic mutations and will now pass those on to future generations of their species, butterflies and worms. Another point in Kendra's report was that every time there is a storm, a typhoon, and Fukushima Daiichi's been hit by typhoons again and again, there's a spreading of the radioactivity from those forested mountainsides into previously uncontaminated places or into supposedly decontaminated places. Physicians for Social Responsibility and International Physicians for Prevention Against Nuclear War just put that out. 10,000 cancers can be expected from Fukushima. They've already seen 100 or more childhood thyroid cancers that you should have seen a handful at most. So that's Fukushima related. But besides that, the other insurmountable risks with nuclear power are the radioactive waste dilemma. It's deadly forever. We don't know what to do with it. And even routine releases of radiation at every stage of the nuclear fuel chain. And then there's also that practice that's been going on since the beginning of the incineration of radioactive debris, which then puts radioactivity into the air. One of the dangers is they may try to dump the tritium into the ocean and just say dilution is the solution to radioactive pollution. They've got American advisors that are getting paid by Tokyo Electric to say dump it in the ocean. And the radioactivity has been reaching the North American West Coast for some time now.
Yeah.
With an increased frequency of respiratory illnesses, one must question the quality of air we're breathing. For example, the prevalence of asthma in the United States has increased by more than 75% since 1980. The UCLA Institute of the Environment and Sustainability stated environmental exposures can cause infants to be born premature with low weight or to be born with certain birth defects. These babies are far more likely to die in infancy, and those who survive have high risks of brain, respiratory, and digestive problems in early life. Additionally, the long-term effects include the risk for heart disease and diabetes in adulthood. As radioactive pollution continues to accumulate throughout the environment as a result of nuclear incidents like Fukushima, the U.S. government's response is not to try to mitigate this threat to public health, but rather to increase the official maximum exposure levels and basically redefine how much radiation is considered safe. So far, we've only covered common air pollution problems, but what about chemtrails? Aluminum poisoning, contamination, and toxicity have been linked to dementia, but when combined in conjunction with vaccines or trace minerals of fluoride, it can be even more dangerous. Wigington stated that many people are experiencing flu-like symptoms of sneezing, wheezing, itchy eyes, phlegm, and coughing that is attributed to chemtrails. Wigington stated, "It cannot not be connected. It must be connected. There is a mountain of metal raining down on us, period. It wasn't here before." Wigington went on to say that we know that the government knew the harmful effects of geoengineering. It's common knowledge at this point, and they continue to spray anyway. At minimum, one can only conclude that this massive health implication for life on Earth is either an accepted consequence or, worse yet, a desired objective. We know that it's not just these metals, aluminum, barium, and strontium, that we have identified, but there's a toxic synergism between these metals and other metals that we are exposed to, like mercury in the vaccines. We were given studies that indicated that if you combined aluminum with mercury under the right conditions, toxicity can increase up to 10,000%. When they are combined, they become much more harmful. For anyone born from 1990 onwards, chemtrails are something they've seen almost every day of their lives, but I can assure you that this is not the norm. Unfortunately, chemtrails have been added into commercials, magazine advertising, and television shows as a way to normalize something that is not normal. For example, in 2000, a high-level executive at an American airline revealed his office was visited by two men from an unnamed government agency. End quote. They told us that the government was going to pay our airline, along with others, to release special chemicals from commercial aircraft. When asked what the chemicals were and why we were going to spray them, they told us that information was given on a need-to-know basis, and we weren't cleared for it. We were made to sign non-disclosure forms that basically stated that we would go to prison if we told anyone what we knew. So what is the objective for poisoning our air supply? The main objective is the literal slow kill of humanity through a weakened immune system. Secondly, diseases can be spread through nanoparticulates which enter our bloodstream upon breathing them in. In particular, Morgellons disease has risen drastically since the inception of chemtrails and was an unknown disease beforehand. This is certainly not a coincidence. A weakened immune system plays into the need for Big Pharma to come up with new vaccinations and medications to alleviate something that was contrived to cull humanity right from the start. It all boils down to greed, money, and eugenics. So if everyone is being sprayed, then doesn't that include those who ordered the spraying to occur? Yes, but through costly blood transfusions. Those in power believe they can eliminate these toxins on a regular basis, while for the rest of us, they accumulate within our bodies. Similar to the fluoridation of our water supplies, forcibly medicating the population through chemtrails without a vote or our consent to do so is a crime against humanity. By remaining silent, we are basically acquiescing our approval of having our air, water, and food supplies contaminated and poisoned.
Fast überall in der Europäischen Union ist die Arbeitslosigkeit seit der Finanzkrise 2008 deutlich gestiegen. Besonders betroffen sind junge Menschen. In der Eurozone liegt die Jugendarbeitslosigkeit aktuell bei insgesamt 22%. Rund 5,1 Millionen junge Europäer sind ohne Beschäftigung. Eigentlich sollten die Jugendlichen die Zukunft eines Landes sein, aber jeder Zweite sieht keine Perspektive im eigenen Land und in einem Europa, das seit Jahren von anhaltender Arbeitslosigkeit geprägt ist. Man spricht sogar von einer verlorenen Generation, denn die jungen Menschen haben oft nicht einmal die Möglichkeit, eine Ausbildung in ihrem Land zu beginnen. Mit 48% hat Griechenland die höchste Arbeitslosigkeit bei den 15- bis 24-Jährigen, dicht gefolgt von Spanien mit 45% und Kroatien mit 44,1%. Doch warum sind gerade im Süden Europas so viele studierte Menschen ohne Beschäftigung? Sind das die dramatischen Folgen der europäischen Krisenpolitik?
Das Schlimmste für mich ist die persönliche Perspektivlosigkeit. Am Ende hat die Situation Auswirkungen auf die eigene Stimmung, auf die Beziehung. Man hat keine Lust mehr, Arbeit zu suchen, ist total frustriert.
de buscar empleo y resignarte y un poco frustrante.
Kein Wunder, dass 90% der jungen Spanier bei ihren Eltern wohnen, dass 200.000 seit Beginn der Krise ins Ausland gegangen sind und dass es in Spanien ein neues Wort gibt, Ninis. Eine doppelte Verneinung, die gut 17% der Jugendlichen definiert, die weder arbeiten noch eine Ausbildung machen.
Jugendarbeitslosigkeit bedeutet Armut in der Zukunft, denn die Betroffenen können mit geringem oder gar keinem Einkommen nicht genug in die Rentenkasse einzahlen. Europa hat keine Zukunft, wenn es mit der Sparpolitik so weitergeht. Es ist offensichtlich, dass wir mit einem Mindestlohn, der fast an der Armutsgrenze ist, nie die Grundlagen für eine moderne Wirtschaft des 21. Jahrhunderts aufbauen können.
Bleibt zu hoffen, dass die neuen Entscheidungsträger etwas ändern, und zwar schnell, denn eine frustrierte und verlorene Generation ist eine Gefahr für die Zukunft.
There's a stablemate of fear in this technique of manipulation, and it's called chaos. You put fear and chaos together, and you create a situation where people become open to A, being protected from what they've been manipulated to fear, and B, in a state of chaos, people are looking for order out of the chaos. And if you can present your order, in other words, your agenda, as a solution to the chaos, then vast numbers of people are going to be open to your solution, which is taking your agenda along the road you want it to go.
The NATO commander doesn't know the situation when he's talking like that. For ISIS, it's much easier to use their forces they have in the European countries or in the United States or in Russia. They don't have to take the risk to come with refugees and to cross the border. They can do it, but they don't need it. We have to show in Germany that this ideology is wrong. This ideology is anti-Islamic. And it's just a killer ideology. And we have to show the young people who live in Germany and in other European countries that this is a wrong way. It doesn't solve one single problem. And that is our duty. Divided countries are weak countries. And I have the impression that certain American politicians like weak countries in the Middle East. Syria is a historical country. And that's the beautiful thing, that in Syria, Christians, Muslims, Shias, Sunnis have been living together and could live together and should live together, even with the Kurds. So we shouldn't separate this country, we shouldn't divide this country. That's a very, very bad idea.
Well, the neoconservative ideology is American moral hegemony. Well, to have hegemony over the world, it means you have to subdue the others. This includes Russia and China. We have two nuclear powers with massive military capabilities, and they are in the way of the neoconservative agenda. And so the neoconservatives are driving the United States and Western Europe into conflict with Russia and China. Russia and China are not going to give up and say, okay, we'll be American vassals like England and France and Germany and Australia and Canada and Japan. They're not going to do that. They've made it quite clear that they're going to look after their own interests, that they have independent foreign policies, and that they don't approve of us. And all the problems that the BRICS are having, I believe they originate in Washington as part of the attack. For example, look what's going on in Brazil. We're trying to have arrested the leaders of the Reform Party. You know, first we had Lula, now we have this woman with the Russian name, Rostev, and they're both facing arrest and indictment. And this is our doing. We're trying to get rid of the political party in Brazil that took Brazil into the BRICS, into the alliance with Russia and China and India. And of course, the Obama administration overthrew the reformist government in Honduras. It's currently trying to overthrow the successor of Chavez in Venezuela, Carrera in Ecuador. We got rid of the woman who was president of Argentina, framed her up, got her framed up on some charge. We now have in this right-wing neocon coup governing Argentina. So the United States' ability to overthrow governments, it doesn't always require military invasion. That's what we used in the Middle East. We overthrew the government in Ukraine without a military invasion. NATO covers up for us, covers up the war crimes, provides forward bases, provides diplomatic cover for our actions that would otherwise be denounced around the world as war crimes. As all this comes out, the Europeans see this. They begin to realize that, you know, we're getting drawn in too far and we're going to suffer consequences. And why are we doing this? Another thing is they're beginning to realize they're being pushed into conflict with Russia, not just economic conflict, from which Europe has already suffered, but into military conflict. Well, the Europeans don't have anything to gain from military conflict with Russia. It'd be the end of Europe. They're beginning to say, you know, being American vassals is very expensive. What are we getting out of this? We've got millions of refugees. We've got now much stronger opposition parties against us. We've got the people now worried about a military conflict with Russia. These Americans are so reckless and aggressive. And in fact, if Hillary's president, the chances of war with Russia and China extremely high. So we can have some hope from the standpoint that the neoconservative agenda has put so much pressure on the established European political parties that they could finally just say, well, look, we better get an independent foreign policy and stop being American vassals because it's too costly to us and we don't get anything out of it. What do we get out of it? It's not worth it. So it's not completely a foregone conclusion we're going to be forced into a nuclear war.
Well, I've been studying the development of America in terms of freedoms over the last 35, 36, 37 years, and you use the word train. The train left the station a long time ago on freedom. And what I mean by that is just the amount of data that's collected on American citizens, how the police, not only the police, but federal agencies now are armed. You have the National Security Agency, which has not been reeled in at all by the American government. They download almost 2 billion emails a day, our text messages, our Facebook posts. When you go into most large cities today, they have what they call real-time crime centers, which track wherever you go, where you stop, where you shop, what you do. And I say there are over 80,000 SWAT team raids occurring in America annually. 80,000, up from 3,000 in the 1980s. They look at me like, what? They don't report any of that. Those kind of things, when I see the facts, and those are absolute facts, it's enough to make you question where you live. In 2014, Princeton University, in conjunction with some other universities, issued a report. It was detailed. I advise people to go read it who live in this country. They did 2 decades, a study of 2 decades of policies, legislation passed in Washington, D.C., and the conclusion they came to, these are the professors, was that we live in an oligarchy controlled, what they said, by an economic moneyed elite, that the average American has virtually no impact on the government. So when you get elections today and people are voting whatsoever, we're being told by the people who have studied the thing that voting doesn't really work anymore in terms of influencing policy. If you look at the candidates running today, probably the two leading candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, they're zillionaires. So the average citizen no longer, in my opinion, can be president. It takes so much money to run for president, so who are we electing? As the Princeton University studies show, we're electing one of the moneyed elite, and who do they protect? Do they protect the average citizen? No. They're protecting the people with money, obviously. As Jefferson, all the great early Americans said, Washington, Madison, who wrote the Bill of Rights, by the way, said the way to keep free government is by a knowledgeable citizenry that's there, and as James Madison said, take alarm at the first experiment with liberties, and we haven't done that. So this country, according to the government itself, could lock down at any moment. The government that was written originally, the average citizen was at the center of it. Remember those 3 beautiful words the Constitution starts with: we the people, we are the government.
Ist Trump wirklich Republikaner oder ist er ein U-Boot der Clintons, der die Republikaner öffentlich blamieren soll, damit die Demokratin Hillary bessere Chancen hat? Tatsächlich war Trump gemäß Wikipedia bis 2009 Mitglied der Demokraten und spendete vor einigen Jahren $100.000 an die Clinton Foundation. Er soll über viele Jahre gute Beziehungen zu Hillary Clinton gepflegt haben und bezeichnete Bill Clinton öffentlich als den besten amerikanischen Präsidenten aller Zeiten. Einmal mehr scheint sich abzuzeichnen, dass die bevorstehenden Wahlen um das angeblich mächtigste Amt der Welt keine echte Wahl, sondern eher eine perfide inszenierte Show darstellt. Kritiker bemängeln seit vielen Jahren, dass den Posten des US-Präsidenten nur erhält, wer den bestehenden Geld- und Machteliten ergeben ist.
Let's everybody get this straight. These are not debates. They're game shows. They've been taken over by the major networks. So what they've done, and you can see the setup, they've turned this into the age of stupid. It's a reality show. There is no Republican Party, just like there's no Democratic Party.
Basically, you see the population control as a pattern, say in the Zika propaganda, where they're trying to curtail birthing. So the thing about the ruling elite is they like to control fictitious entities to blame the disease on. And when you control the fictitious entity that no one else can kind of confirm visually, you control all the outcomes. The big pattern there again is that people have lost their ability to think independently of the media. People are making a lot of their life decisions based on safety concerns and not because it makes any sense. And the vaccination issue is a prime example of that. If you want to propose a theory that vaccinating a person improves immunity above not vaccinating, you literally have to go out and you have to test the immunity of vaccinated people against unvaccinated, and those studies have never been done. And they're the only studies that the CDC absolutely refuses to conduct. And people really need to wrap their heads around that, is that they're taught to believe the government is out for their best interests. But if they were out for their best interests, how can you possibly declare that vaccination improves immunity over doing nothing when you've never tested that hypothesis? I mean, they are picking vaccinations, medications, fluoride in the water, chemtrails, GMOs, pesticides on the non-organic produce. They are picking those modalities of attack and toxic poisoning just because the average person would recognize the guns, the barbed wire, the gas chambers, and any of the other standard eugenic modalities that the ruling elite have always used against the population. But this is where it all starts. If the person can control themselves and kind of control what food they eat and kind of hoard their financial resources to themselves, you can kind of take a stab at the heart of the dragon. What people should do is just get back to the basics. The transhuman agenda is just basically the cycle of trying to prove to humans that their body is faulty, try to encourage them to take on cyborg qualities. Of course, we're seeing that with these watches that interact with you, but that's just the start of it. And what they're trying to do is say, look, you're you're faulty. And this is something they've always kind of pushed on, whether it's religion saying you're born a sinner, whether it's the medical system saying you're born genetically faulty, or whether it's the evolutionary doctrine saying, you know, you're just born here by random chance. They're always trying to do the psychic beatdown. So if they keep polluting you, your body will keep failing you. And then what they're going to try and do is they're going to try and gradually use that Fabianistic approach, which is the inch-by-inch doctrine. And they're going to try and get people so fed up and so disgusted with their own humanity, they're going to want to take on the robot characteristics, or even implant robotics into them. Their dream is to make sure that they have the ability to turn on and turn off the slaves like the computer. They see the computer as something they want to turn the humans into, because the computer works for free. You don't have to feed it. You can shut it off. It never rebels against you. You see a lot of that awakening going on. I really don't think the elite have calculated this all out in fine detail. I think they're losing a little bit of control, and they're trying to rehash some of their plans. But in reality, if you look at the psychological profile of a psychopath, they actually don't think they can be stopped, even if they let you know their agenda. And I think that's one of the main concepts that we have to focus on is in the truth movement, is that is a psychological flaw inside a psychopath that we can take advantage of, because it's not really a conspiracy theory, because they're out in the open about this stuff. And given they're out in the open, I think we can defend ourselves and make headway against them.
Um den Ursachen der Epidemie, welche Anfang 2014 ihren Lauf nahm, genauer auf den Grund zu gehen, beschloss Hans Tolzin selbst nach Guinea zu reisen, um sich die Begebenheiten vor Ort noch einmal genau anzusehen.
Ich war in dem Dorf, wo die allerersten Fälle aufgetreten sind.
Einen ersten möglichen Hinweis liefert der Krankenpfleger der ortsansässigen Krankenstation. Er behandelte die allerersten Ebola-Patienten dieses Dorfes.
Das Kind war natürlich Malaria-positiv.
Jährlich sterben in Guinea etwa 10.000 Menschen an Malaria, also an Ebola-ähnlichen Symptomen.
Meine Hypothese ist, man hat einfach die bisherigen Malaria-Fälle oder die Fälle, die man als Malaria etikettiert hat, jetzt einfach mit Ebola etikettiert.
Doch wer hat eigentlich von Ebola profitiert? Wem hat dieses Ereignis genützt? Je schlimmer eine Seuche dem Anschein nach wütet, desto mehr Forschungs- und Hilfsgelder fließen den beteiligten Instituten und den Hilfsorganisationen zu. Mit der Begründung, man dürfe keine Zeit für aufwendige Überprüfungen von Wirksamkeit und Sicherheit verlieren, gelang es der Pharmaindustrie, neue Medikamente und Impfstoffe ins Spiel zu bringen, deren Weiterentwicklung aufgrund bereits beobachteter schwerer Nebenwirkungen ins Stocken geraten war. Das wirtschaftliche Potenzial dieser neuartigen Medikamente und Impfstoffe, insbesondere jener, die auf Genmanipulation setzen, wird von Fachkreisen auf Hunderte von Milliarden Euro geschätzt. Die Möglichkeiten einer solchen Inszenierung sind natürlich in erster Linie bei der WHO angesiedelt. Den größten Einfluss auf die WHO hat wiederum die US-Regierung und die Melinda- und Bill Gates Stiftung. Beide sind die größten Geldgeber der WHO. Ob die Interessen dieser beiden Institutionen mit den Interessen der Völker Afrikas übereinstimmen, ist fraglich. Die 3 von Ebola hauptsächlich betroffenen Länder Westafrikas bestehen praktisch nur aus Bodenschätzen. Und an denen haben alle Industrienationen größtes Interesse.
The United States would establish a military command in Liberia, and our teams are working as fast as they can to move in personnel, equipment and supplies.
Das Interessante ist, dass du über das Ausrufen von Seuchen oder angeblichen Seuchen, ja, ein Land destabilisieren kannst. Das ist Geopolitik.
When they alert us by way of even movies, television, I mean, it's in advertising, what's going to happen, and it happens to us, and we sit and we watch the television. We watch these shows into which they've inserted all their little, you know, sign symbols, even plot lines, and we sit and we lap it up. So if we're accepting it and willingly participating, then you know what? We deserve it. People are naturally cooperative, but we've been manipulated and allowed ourselves to be manipulated so that our natural cooperation is changed, it's knocked down a level into competition. That is changed, knocked down a level by further manipulation into conflict. And then they manipulate us with our conflicts that they've manipulated us into having. One level down below that into this very, very base state. Eat or be eaten, kill or be killed. So that's it. We're taken from cooperation down to competition, down to conflict, down to eat or be eaten, kill or be killed. And that's why everybody's willing to go to war. No snowflake in an avalanche ever feels responsible. So all these people with this feeling of, you know, unease, they are the snowflakes. They constitute the avalanche. They are the wrecking ball on the world. And they're saying, oh, I'm a little snowflake. I'm helpless. I'm not really doing anything here, but I don't feel good about what's happening. Well, the snowflakes have to wake up.
Well, the interesting thing is with the upgrades, and these are children that have often been born to parents that have had extraterrestrial encounters, not always understood what they were. They may have seen it as a spiritual experience. They may have thought, you know, that through their religious lens, it's an angel rather than a light being. It doesn't really matter. But what it does mean is that they've been aware that they've had interactions with other intelligences, whether they see that as guardian angels, spirit guides, whatever. And because these new children are not so easily programmable, and this is the important part of the new human, is that the reality for them is not so, you can't condition them so easily into 3D world because that's deliberate. Because they're actually leading us into our true nature, our multidimensional nature. And that I mean is that because they're harder to program, and they appear dysfunctional. They're not dysfunctional. They're simply more aware of the matrix. They're operating within the matrix. These children see all of that. They see energy fields around animals and plants. They are aware they can communicate with them. They're aware when people aren't well. They can see through people's bodies. And one story I will tell you is about an engineer that wrote to me, and he said his 12-year-old son said, you know, Dad, I'm not from here, I'm from Andromeda. My mother was blue, had blue skin, and I do find it really hard down here because, you know, I know there's something going to happen. And he explained about that we are reaching another level of awareness, and he said this time we might actually make it. Because he said we've been here 2 or 3 times before and we didn't quite make it, but there's 95% chance now that humanity will make it this time. And he said, and we've come to help. I had a 9-year-old. He says, my past life was Orion. I used to work on higher technologies, including time travel. I am a light physicist, and I have come here with this awareness. He said many scientists here won't have an understanding because it's too in advance of what they understand. He said the nearest to understanding what I can do, he said, is probably Tesla. He said, but he's a baseline. The information that I have is way beyond that, but it's a good start. The children tell me that when they go to school and they're taught such rubbish that isn't right, is inaccurate, and has no use and no value, and that is why they switch off, because they already have that within them, the knowledge and awareness they need. And as this 9-year-old said, that when you go to school, they program you out of your light. They have superior mental and analytical capabilities. They've got direct connection to higher awareness. They have extreme sensitivity to thought and emotion, photographic memories, fast motor neuron responses like the ADHD, manipulation. They can manipulate time and space. They're telepathic, many of them. And they recall being their past lives, being on spacecraft. They know they have downloads. They know that they interact with many different beings. They may come out with strange languages or write strange scripts, which are part of their education on the craft. And they're aware of their origins. They're all saying this is part of the shift, that we have got to let go of the third dimensional limiting reality. As Dr. Olson says, we're separating out into low frequency people and high frequency people. And the low frequency people, they're making a choice to stay with the present paradigm. But there's many that are saying that no longer fits for me. So what I'm seeing is this is happening, and this chaos is part of the preparation for letting go of all the old so that we can move into the new. And these children have come to birth that with with the older generations providing the bridge. So we can support them so they can do their job. And that's why we need new schools. They're the ones that will teach us what they need. I talked to a 17-year-old in New Zealand who told me he's come in as an ambassador from Arcturus, and he said he's an ecological engineer. In other words, he's come in to provide a way of creating environments that we can live in, which is in harmony with the planet, rather than the way at the moment that we adjust the planet to suit us. human language can actually change the configuration of DNA. They've already seen this can happen. What is it? What is language? It's a frequency. What is music? It's a frequency. And you've got lots of the star kids bringing in beautiful music, which actually is there to rebalance the frequencies. So what we're learning is that if we're looking at energy, the way to affect energy is through frequency. And as this 9-year-old told me, is the stress of modern society, which is deliberate, by the way, is to keep us dysfunctional so that we can't be all we can be. So in other words, we're shut down. And certainly these children have come in for a reason. And if they come in with all these abilities and all this awareness and all this understanding of the way they wish to change what's happening here and to raise us into a new understanding of who we are and what we are, there's no way they're going to do that for a waste of time. They're not going to come and then suddenly it's all going to fall into a heap. They're only coming because they know it's going to happen. They know it's going to work.
people are waking up to this hidden reality and the fact that everything is information, energetic information. We're in an information field, as David Icke calls it. I would go so far to say as we are in a frequency war. I love how David Icke talks about consciousness and the intentional muting of consciousness, because that's what's going on. But one thing, and I stress this over and over again, despite all their best efforts, the controllers utilize, whether it's chemtrails and whatnot, scalar and HARP technology, and now CERN, they cannot stop this influx of high energy streaming in from the galactic core. They cannot stop the increasing frequency of this very planet and probably this very plane. I think it's more than just this galaxy. I think the frequency of the entire plane is increasing. And so despite their best efforts, they can't stop that process. And what mainstream physicists have found out, which they've since covered up, is that normally stable elements like carbon-114 are exhibiting more rapid decay. And in Star Trek terms, we're carbon-based units. So that means we're becoming more energetic. So as long as we avoid the GMOs, the vaccines, and all this other stuff, we can't help. And especially if we consciously intend to, we cannot help to become higher vibrational beings and become, once again, eventually our former multidimensional quantum selves. I believe that process for a significant portion of the surface population is well underway, and it won't take huge armies of people either undergoing this process to create a ripple effect. I think the tide has already turned. I think it'll take far smaller numbers of people to reach this higher level of spiritual metaphysical evolution than we realize to turn the tables. Like I said, I do believe that this process is well underway. That's why these controllers are pulling out all the stops now. To me, what they're doing, everything they're doing, is an act of desperation. I should mention to your listeners that if you've gone through a period in the recent past where you're feeling very weary, tired, your eyelids weigh a ton each, that's part of this transition phase that you're going through. These heightened frequencies and intensified cosmic energies are affecting people in different ways. Add on to that CERN and HARP and scalar waves and everything else. Some people are becoming, finding themselves really irritable, impulse control issues at times. They're getting upset easily by people, places, or things, or animals. But just check yourselves and do what it takes to get grounded again, to regain your inner harmony, your inner equilibrium. I would avoid being around negative, toxic, hosted people. So just guard your equilibrium, your inner harmony, and your frequency. There's a lot of things one can do to maintain an even keel, and when you do find yourself a little disrupted and a little destabilized, dysregulated, just do what you can to get back on an even footing, and it won't take long. It's all part of this transition process we're going through. Fear not, you'll be past this weariness, irritability phase before too long, and you will be able to catch your second wind. And I do believe for your listeners out there, the best is yet to come, that you will be able to heal and reintegrate faster because of this energetic process that we're going through, that the whole solar system finds itself in.